Previously on the Top 100.
Go to Super Bowl 14 and take that touchdown pass at the end of the game to John Stallworth. And that's who I am.
He pulls it in at the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, and it's a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
That 83 Raider team, I'll put that defense against anybody. And the whole key is Mike Haynes.
There's a lot of things you can learn out on a football field. You learn how to take a good licking and not cry about it. You learn how to hand one out and not go around bragging about it.
He was the same junkyard dog on the field as he always was, but off the field, he turned into one of the most loving human beings I've ever known.
You know, I enjoy sex as much as Joe Namath. Only I do it with one girl, you know?
There you go.
It's not only a catch for Kansas City, it's a catch for Kenton. His 63rd career touchdown catch.
One of the things that I always want to do was let people know that this is my territory. If you come in here, you're going to have to pay.
He's a fairly skinny guy. He's run 1,000 marathons. You would not think that he was one of the greatest players in the history of the National Football League.
He was explosive in the open field. You know, it wasn't a matter of eluding. It was a matter of running over those defensive backs.
Who knew that that kid was going to turn out to be one of the greatest all-time players?
Picked up by Woodson. He's got green carpet. Rod Woodson goes all the way for the Steeler touchdown.
And now, the countdown continues.
If you start a conversation about O.J. Simpson and you begin by talking about what a great tailback he was, initially people are confused and then they get mad. I mean, it's just so weird now because even talking about him as a football player, it seems like you're missing, like we're overlooking the obvious. O.J.'s football legacy is destroyed. People will never remember or think about what a great running back he was because of the last half of his life, and there's no way around it. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to figure that out. In his obituary, football player now is mentioned in the first paragraph, but they don't talk about USC or the Bills until paragraph 5. I think people have completely overlooked the fact now that he was clearly the best running back of the 70s. So if you sort of realize that he's the best running back at a time when the most important part of the offensive game is running the football, I think you could easily argue that O.J. Simpson is the most valuable player of the 70s for the entire league. Every time he ran the ball, it was almost like the Bills' equivalent of throwing the ball deep. It might not work, but if you made a mistake, they would score.
You know, when you're fresh in a game, early in the game, you got a lot on your mind. You're thinking of the game plans, you're thinking of things that you saw, because you've been watching it on film all week. As the game goes on, you get tired, and you stop thinking so much, and you start reacting. It's like putting things in that computer. You just push a button, you get the ball, and you go.
I've seen footage of O.J. Simpson running the football dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and I can't, for the life of me, even remember the number of the guy handing him the ball. He had no element of surprise. He had no passing game to sort of change the way defensive played him, and he was incredibly effective. He was not going to play in a Super Bowl. There was no shot. So he has this game on Thanksgiving where he rushes for 273 yards. Proof that the best football player in the world is just sort of being wasted on this team going no place.
On Thanksgiving 1976, Buffalo's quarterback completed 4 of 21 passes for 29 yards. O.J. Simpson ran 29 times for a then single-game record 273 yards in defeat.
I tell you, they're behind on the scoreboard, but you get the feeling they've won something here today.
The playoffs eluded Simpson in 10 of his 11 seasons. Jim Brown's single-season rushing record did not. In 1973, playing a 14-game season, Simpson sprinted for a staggering 2,003 yards.
Gaining 2,003 yards in a 14-game schedule is substantially more impressive than Eric Dickerson's best season, or Barry Sanders' best season, or Terrell Davis's best season.
O.J. running left. O.J. 5 more. There it is. He did it. Yeah. I just wonder if the three of us at this moment fully realize what it has been our great privilege to watch O.J. Simpson run for 2,000 yards.
Beyond seeing what he's tangibly doing, there's then that intangible quality of what would happen if he played for the Steelers? Or what if he was on the Raiders? How many yards would he run for? That actually kind of lifts his greatness.
In 1952, Gino Marchetti began his career as a rather average offensive lineman. Colt head coach Weeb Ewbank moved him to the other side of the ball, and the NFL's first great defensive end was unleashed. Marchetti used his knowledge as a blocker and became unblockable.
Here he comes from the left against Green Bay. And does he pulverize Bart Starr?
He's 6'4", 246 pounds. And today, that's, a decent size for an outside linebacker. They called him Gino the Giant because he was one of the biggest people in the league.
Look, Chuck, Jim Taylor wants the ball.
I think Mr. Taylor changed his mind, wouldn't you?
My vision of Gino is flying around the end, shirt tail flying, jumping over a fallen body that he just threw, and the quarterback's eyes getting about that big. That's my picture of Gino. If you look at film on him, he's always flying around the end. I mean, he's not bull rushing very much, although he could. He was quick, he had great athleticism, and he'd shed you, he would just throw you.
Here's a fine close-up look at number 89. Watch him as he moves one way, and now pops back into the hole to stop Detroit fullback Petrosati dead in his tracks.
There's a great story about Gino. He was, they were playing in San Francisco, and the guy opposite him was Bob St. Clair, who was a college teammate at the University of San Francisco, and currently in the Hall of Fame. And when the game was over, Gino was walking off the field. The Colts won. He had obviously played a great game, and he heard these footsteps and somebody yelling at him coming from behind. And he looked over. It was St. Clair chasing him, and he thought for some reason St. Clair wanted to hit him. And St. Clair came up to him and said, put his hand on his shoulder, and he said, I just want to say I touched you once today. Never laid a hand on him. Unfortunately, we can't support his career by statistics. They didn't even keep sacks, not even come close to keeping sacks.
I've been asked the most sacks I've had in one game. I know I've had 9. It's a great feeling because it was a challenge to me, one-on-one. Feel like, man, I got him. I got him.
Gino the Giant unloads on quarterback Jim Lanowski for a safety and 2 points.
Marchetti fought in the Battle of the Bulge at age 17. When he broke his leg in the Colts' 1958 championship game, he refused to be taken to the locker room and remained on the sideline until victory was assured. Gino was a giant.
He was the real-life version of the John Wayne characters. He was strong and silent, just this towering presence. The most beloved player on the team was Gino Marchetti.
Everybody spoke here tonight about the thrills I've given them. But nobody's ever said the thrills that I've had on this football field. I appreciate it.
When I look at where the game is today in the NFL, I can point to Lance Alworth as having influenced it maybe as much as any person ever. The reason being is the AFL was more wide open than the NFL, and Lance Alworth was the face of that.
San Diego Chargers are fortunate to have Lance Alworth in their stable, pro football's finest receiver.
There was not a more appropriate name for anybody that has ever had to stand still and then be an athlete than Bambi. Every time his foot touched the ground, it was on his toes, and he would bounce like a young fawn. That head was as steady as it could be, but his feet were bouncing and had the grace and the fluidness of a deer.
Charlie Flowers called me that. He said, you got short brown hair and big brown eyes and you run like a deer. I'm going to call you Bambi.
Jerry Jones played on the University of Arkansas freshman team in 1961, often practicing on the same field with the star of the Razorbacks varsity, Lance Alworth.
It was like being on the field with Red Grange, or it was like being on the field with Bronco Nagurski. And it actually inspired me. The reason is, very early on, I had the opportunity to buy the San Diego Chargers. And I don't mind telling you, a whole part of the reason that I just couldn't sleep thinking about a chance to be involved with the Chargers had everything to do with the fact Lance Alworth was playing on that team.
Alworth helped lead the team to the 1963 AFL Championship. He was the key element in one of pro football history's most explosive offenses.
It's a genius of Sid Gilman that we all recognize in pro football. He built an offense around Lance Alworth's abilities.
Take a drive corner, Lance, coming in from a good wide position and starting right down that middle and then breaking it off and taking it to the corner. You'll lose him, you'll lose him, you'll lose him.
Alworth's artistry resulted in 7 seasons with over 1,000 yards receiving. And in 1978, Alworth became the first AFL player enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
To me, knowing what it takes to be a great receiver today, Lance personified that. And you look at what the AFL has contributed to the game, and you look at Lance Alworth's impact during that time, then you can truly say that he impacted and changed the NFL.
So in Canton, Ohio, where the sport had its beginnings, the Professional Football Hall of Fame was born. A home for football history, where visitors are greeted by the legendary Jim Thorpe, whose flowing power and grace are captured in an eternal run for daylight beneath the rainbow dome of the Rotunda.
Was named Bright Path by his Native American mother. Most everybody else knew him as Jim Thorpe, 2-time Olympic gold medalist and the world's greatest athlete.
Whatever sport you happen to care about in America in 1912, Jim Thorpe did it better than anybody. I mean, if you were a track and field fan, he was the greatest runner in the world. If you were a baseball fan, he was one of the greatest baseball players in the world. If you were a football fan, he was the greatest football player in the world. He happened to be one of the great billiards players of all time, although people don't really know that about him. He was a great ballroom dancer. He won prizes at ballroom dancing.
Thorpe saved his smoothest steps for the gridiron. From Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania to the fledgling professional ranks.
He was so elusive as a runner. The men who played against him remembered how he would give you a hip and then take it away. He'd let you think you could tackle him, and then all of a sudden he'd be gone. The hip would disappear, and you'd see his heels.
Thorpe could also run through would-be tacklers. Future Notre Dame head coach Knute Rockne learned that the hard way.
He was playing left end for the Massillon Tigers, and I was playing left halfback. He slipped through and tackled me for a couple of yard losses, and I patted him on the shoulder. I says, "Young fella, you're doing wonderful. But look at all the people up here in the stand that come to see old Jim run. How about letting old Jim run?" So the next time I carried the ball around, I hit him in the head with my knee and hip and bowled him over and went on down for a 60-yard touchdown. So after the point after touchdown, here come poor old Rock with a player under each arm and all wetted down with a sponge, and I walked up and patted him on the shoulder. I said, "That a boy, Rock, you let old Jim run, didn't you?"
The fields were slower and boggier. They had terrible shoes. Their jerseys were stuffed with flannel, and when they got wet, they weighed 15 pounds. He could run like that with all that crap on him. My God, how great he must have been. LaDainian Tomlinson has it much easier than Jim Thorpe ever had it.
There wouldn't be an NFL without Jim Thorpe. In 1920, he gave the newborn league credibility as its first president and its first on-field star. He played for several teams, including the all-Native American Oorang Indians. This is the only footage known to exist of Thorpe playing in the NFL. We know him mostly from faded photographs, yet his legend runs on.
We hear the faintest echo of what he was, but it's loud enough. Had anybody been there to see the real thing, I think we'd call him hands down the greatest player who ever lived.
I suppose Raymond Berry was the hero to everybody who wasn't very athletic. Berry just didn't look like a football player. And of course, he was blind as a bat. Had not had a particularly distinguished career at SMU. Was not particularly fast. But the most important thing with Berry were these things.
When it comes to pass catching, here's the man they'll never replace. His name is Raymond Berry, and he has the surest hands in football.
His ability to catch a football and to hang on to it. We have that vision of him laid out. That's Raymond Berry. Laid out, going out of bounds, catching the damn thing.
In 1958, Berry emerged from relative obscurity to earn recognition as one of pro football's elite performers.
I think you'd have to say that the 58 championship game made Raymond Berry every much as it did Johnny Unitas.
In an epic contest, Berry caught 12 passes for 178 yards. Both were postseason records and helped the Colts beat the Giants in sudden death overtime. The game propelled pro football and Raymond Berry into the national spotlight.
Hey, you still using that greasy kid stuff on your hair?
Sure, why not?
Cause Vitalis keeps your hair neat all day without grease. Give it a good workout. Berry had to almost construct himself by the hard work, devotion, and dedication. what Barry did that was original and special, working so hard to make his moves, working so hard to catch the ball, working so hard not to go out of bounds, all of that does distinguish him. Practicing over and over and over and over again, and getting Unitas to stay out and practice after practice so that it becomes absolutely second nature.
Raymond Barry's relentless pursuit of perfection enabled him to retire as the league's all-time leader in receptions.
Intangibles, I now realize, are just as much a gift as strength, speed, all that. I just love to play the game, and I love to play it right. It really ticked me off to not have top performance. So I was set on go all the time, looking for ways to get better.
It's the old cliche of brain over brawn. Nobody represents brain over brawn who's ever played the game better than Raymond Barry. I think you always have to measure people in any sport by the era that they played. You don't put Babe Ruth in the context of today's game. You say, how good was he at that time? And at that time, Barry was the best.
And that is me at age 11. It was taken in 1957. It tells you a lot about my history with this guy because, I watched him play all through my childhood. These are things that I will always remember.
Here's Chuck Bednarik, Pennsylvania's All-American center. His exploits on the field are well known, and the Eagles are counting on him. Make sure you see this great Eagle team in action in 1949.
The thing that they talk about with Bednarik is that he was the last of the 60-minute men. But what's lost in that is how well he played.
Playing both center and linebacker, Chuck Bednarik earned all NFL honors 6 times during his 14-year career. Number 60 had many jobs on the field, but it was off of it that his hard-working reputation was cemented.
Back in those days, even the top players, even the players that were making a little bit of money, weren't making enough to support a full family, so they had to have part-time jobs. Practice would be over at 12:30, 1 o'clock. He would drive to the office, put on a coat and tie, and go around and sell concrete. That was what he did throughout his career, so he became Concrete Charlie.
It was the perfect nickname for a player who took pride in hitting his opponents like a ton of bricks.
This is the way you go after him. You're frothing from the mouth. And you say, get him, get him. And you get into that sort of a cannibalistic feeling. All you want to do is go out there and, like I say, you just want to kill somebody. Not mean you're going to put him in the ground after, but you just want to kill a guy.
In 1960, Bednarik introduced the ground to Giants halfback Frank Gifford in what would become one of the Eagle linebackers' signature plays.
Gifford swings out of the backfield. As soon as he caught the ball, I rammed him. I rammed him good.
Tom Brookshire, I thought, had a really good description of it. He said it was a crack. He said it sounded like an axe splitting a piece of wood. He said when Frank went down, he said, I really thought that he might be dead. Gifford was totally unconscious when he was taken from the field.
Later in that same season of 1960, Bednarik led the Eagles to the NFL championship game. In his 12th year, the last of the 60-minute men played nearly every snap to help hand Vince Lombardi his only playoff loss.
Here's the oldest player on the field, the oldest player on both squads, played 139 of the 142 plays. And at the end, he's the guy that makes the tackle that ends the game.
Bart Starr has just one more chance. He throws a short pass to Jim Taylor. Taylor brings the crowd to its feet as he nearly gets loose, but Chuck Bednarik grabs him on the 10, and that's the end of the line.
I was there in the end zone at Franklin Field, watching him tackle Jim Taylor right in front of me. That's your legend. That's Roy Hobbs stuff right there. And that's Chuck Bednarik. His true accomplishments are larger than the legend that has grown up. I mean, he was everything that people thought he was in 1960, and then some.
Before the countdown continues, here's a look back at numbers 40 to 35. Number 40, O.J. Simpson. Number 39, seven-time first-team All-Pro Gino Marchetti. Number 38, a player who gained over 200 yards receiving, an NFL record 5 times, Lance Alworth. Number 37, widely considered the world's greatest athlete, Jim Thorpe. Number 36, Raymond Berry.
Johnny finds Ray on the far side of the field, and Berry sheds Cowboys like a bucking bronco as he stampedes in to score on a 70-yard play.
Number 35, Chuck Bednarik. And now, number 34.
Deion didn't get on the scene until he played the University of Miami. And I'll never forget it. I ran an out and up. He bit, he went for the interception, and I was like, got him down. And I looked back, I was like, throw it fast, here he comes. The next thing I know, he pushes me down, takes the ball. I'm laying on the carpet in Miami. Looking up, he has my football running back the other way with his hands up in the air in my stadium. Most incredible play I've ever seen by a football player, still to this day. I thought that was the birth of prime time right there, because that was a prime time play.
Atlanta fans' prayers may have been answered too by the NFL's newest primetime attraction.
In the first quarter of his first NFL game, Deion Sanders brought prime time to Sunday afternoons.
Deion drifts to the left, takes it on the 32, dropped it. Picked it up, one man missed him, another man missed him. Now he's going wide off to the right. Deion to the 25, to the 30, to the 35, the 40, the 45, the 50, the 45, the 40. My God, Deion Sanders is going to score! My God!
In 14 seasons with 5 different teams, Sanders returned kicks and also played receiver. But he was most feared as a defensive back.
They're blitzing everybody, coming after him. And Deion Sanders leaped and intercepted on a 39-yard line to the 40, to the 45, to the 50. The 45, the 40, he got a block to the 30, the 25, the 20. Deion Sanders dancing for a long, long touchdown.
Here he goes. Prime time is back. Raises the ball in the air. Holds the ball like Babe Ruth pointing to the outfield fence.
He starts the high step at the 25.
And the Deion shuffle follows.
It's confidence. I don't consider it cockiness. I feel like I was somewhat of an entertainer doing what I love to do. My passion just came out. I just had a tremendous gift. I think everybody who receives a gift ought to be happy about the gift.
We like to say if he's showboating, then that means he's empty. You know, like the truck that goes over the track, the empty truck makes the loudest noise. But Deion makes noise, and he is full. Don't you fool yourself. You're not just playing Deion, the physical player. You're not just playing Deion, the quick cornerback. You're playing the cerebral guy that thinks the game through, that understands the game. As we were traveling, Deion had his laptop. He's studying the whole trip. I'm trying to talk to him, man. He's studying. I was like, this is what you were doing when we were playing against each other. I had plenty one-on-one battles with Deion. I walked out of games, 1 catch for 4 yards. I don't think anybody's ever helped me to 1 catch for 4 yards but Deion. He plays chess with you the whole game. My job is to be at a certain spot at a certain time. I don't have time to play chess with you, Deion. I have to go. But he does that. He makes you play chess. And a lot of times, you'll miss that spot.
Sanders made 53 interceptions, scored 22 total touchdowns, and won back-to-back Super Bowl rings with the 49ers in 1994 and the Cowboys in 95. He came to the NFL with glitzy nicknames, Neon Deion and Prime Time, then backed them up with performances that ensured he would also be called one of history's best.
I think Deion Sanders is the greatest athlete I've ever been around. But you rarely see a guy this gifted work this hard. That's what made him great. He didn't rest on his gifts. When you see the combination of the two coming together, you get the Michael Jordans and the Tiger Woods and the Deion Sanders.
After World War II, when I got out of service, I entered college, and during the summer vacations, I worked as a counselor at a boys' camp up in Eagle River, Wisconsin, and one of the campers in my cabin was a young lad named Bobby Luckman. Visiting day came, and his father came. Who was it? It was Sid Luckman. Wow. Growing up in Chicago, I was a Chicago Bears fan, naturally, and Sid Luckman was their quarterback. You had to see Sid Luckman play in order to believe how good he was. Sid Luckman was the first man to throw for over 400 yards in a game. He threw on that day 7 touchdowns, a record that has never been broken. Average yards per attempt, only Otto Graham more than Sid Luckman. Touchdowns per attempt, he still ranks #1 all time. He still holds almost all of the Chicago Bears passing records, even though all those years have passed and the Bears have had a long and wonderful history.
The 1940 NFL championship game remains among Chicago's greatest moments, when, against the Redskins, Sid Luckman ran George Halas's T-formation offense to perfection.
Sid Luckman, as a quarterback, was the man who precipitated the T-formation. He's the man that made it work. 73-0, the largest margin of victory in the history of the National Football League, and it was a great victory for them, and the town sure did celebrate.
In 1943, Luckman set new NFL records for touchdown passes, passing yards, and passer rating. That year, 1 out of every 7 passes he attempted went for a touchdown. Luckman's performance in '43 is still regarded as perhaps the greatest passing season of all time. And to think Luckman might have improved on it had he not taken time out to serve his country.
You're seeing the mighty Bears for the last time. 10 of them are leaving for the nation's armed forces.
Luckman's farewell to football for the war's duration. A touchdown pass to Clark. The Bears win 41-21, and Luckman joins the U.S. Maritime Service with the best wishes of the entire world of sports.
A letter from Halas to Luckman showed the respect the coaching legend had for his star player.
Coach Halas was 88 years old, and he wrote me this letter before he passed away. My dear Sid, I love you with all my heart. 44 wonderful years of knowing you was summed up by 7 words. My pride in you has no bounds. You are the consummate player. My devoted friend, you have a spot in my heart no one else can ever claim. God bless you and keep you, my son.
I love you with all my heart, George Halas. It's touching now, even as I read it many years later. Sid Luckman, he is so well renowned even today among those of us who know the game well.
In the 1958 championship game against the New York Giants, John called a play, which was right over me. The ball snapped, I charged forward with my head down, and Alan Amici scored. I was really impressed with that block. Then on Monday, I run the film down to this particular play, and I found out what happened. When I charged forward, I hit Jim Parker in the butt, and he blocked Rosie Greer, and I fell down on top of both of them. But for 24 hours, I had this illusion that I had made a touchdown block. The turning point really in our offense and our team's ability to compete in the Western Division of those days was the addition of Jim Parker at left tackle. He brought the ability to open holes in the running game. For John Unitas to ever get hit from the blind side, I don't know that it ever even happened.
Coach came up to me and told me that I like steak. I thought he was crazy. I said, hell yeah, I like steak. He said, see that man over there? That's Johnny Unitas. And if you protect him, we all eat. If you don't, nobody eats.
Over his 11-year career, Jim Parker made a habit of gobbling up Hall of Fame defensive ends.
One that comes to my mind to start with is Ernie Staltner, the fearsome foursome Doug Atkins. Parker neutralized him. He was a premier left tackle in the National Football League.
In the back of my mind, I would fantasize a lot. Sometimes I would pretend I was a freight train running over a pedestrian. On pass blocking, I would pretend I was a mountain, and that the other guy, he had to get around this mountain, and it was impossible.
You must understand that in the modern day game, what the offensive linemen are allowed to do under the rules. Do this, this. In Jim Parker's day would be holding. He had basically to keep his hands in like this. We tried to get that ball out of there in 2.5 seconds. And if Jim Parker had done that, extension of the arms, grasping, encircling, Unitas would have had 6 seconds to throw. He said that he would occasionally punch like that real fast and to get them back. When you're a 280-pounder, he pops that left out. It gets your attention. Jim not only played the left tackle position, but they ended up playing left guard too. The year that Lenny Moore established an NFL touchdown record for a halfback, the key play in that season was where Jim Parker at left guard pulled and led him. Jim had the speed and mobility, weighing 275 and 280, to do that.
The cult hero who launched Lenny Moore's runs and saved John Unitas' skin became the first full-time offensive lineman elected to the Hall of Fame.
I remember one day I called, I was having trouble trying to make the team. Raymond said I had the team made because I was the first draft choice, but I kept a suitcase back for the 11 years I was there. I just want to thank you.
Before the countdown continues, here's a look back at numbers 40 to 32. Number 40, O.J. Simpson. Number 39, Gino Marchetti. Number 38, Lance Allworth. Number 37, Jim Thorpe. Number 36, Raymond Berry. Number 35, the last 60-minute player, Chuck Bednarik. Number 34, Deion Sanders.
Deion Sanders, touchdown!
Number 33, a player who once threw 7 touchdowns in one game, Sid Luckman. Number 32, Jim Parker. And now, number 31.
When I was born, my dad, to differentiate my incubator from the rest of them, put a Buffalo Bills hat on there, attached one on. So when his friends would stop by, he would point to say, "That's my son, is the one with the Bills hat on the incubator." I was born in 1985. Bruce Smith was drafted by the Buffalo Bills #1 overall out of Virginia Tech in April of that year. What I remember primarily about Bruce Smith was watching a game, and he made an absolutely unbelievable sack. And as a young kid, I said to my dad, why are they booing him? And he goes, oh, they're not booing. They're chanting, Bruce.
Nobody ruined the run more effectively than number 78, Bruce Smith. He was even better collapsing the pass pocket. Smith played 19 seasons in the NFL. In 13 of them, he had 10 or more sacks.
The city of Buffalo really loved Bruce Smith because he had that kind of working class ethos that you often see in Buffalo. He was tough.
It was hard to believe that a man this large could also be so nimble.
With his 6'4" frame, he was very agile. He would do this amazing 360 spin move and absolutely have a one-on-one chance encounter with the quarterback. Till the day he retired, he would always be using that move, and it worked pretty darn well for him.
I want to make every tackle. I want to make every sack. I want to do it.
We got to be selfish today. Go get 'em. We got to be selfish. When it's 3rd and long, say, I'm going to make a play. Don't depend on nobody else.
I haven't found another job yet that'll pay me $1 million that I can go out and kick the shit out of somebody and not have to go to jail. That's one thing about it that I truly love.
He definitely was sort of a ham in front of the camera.
This movie is rated R. Adult language and violence. Lots of it.
He definitely looked good out there. I mean, he brought a certain flair to the field that Buffalo embraced.
Bruce Smith, game of the century. Game of the century. Bruce Smith.
He won more one-on-one battles than any other player in the history of the NFL. And how do you win more one-on-one battles than anyone in the history of the NFL? You got to be tough. You got to be smart. He was able, when people saw him on tape for years, still get amazing sack numbers close towards the end. That means nobody ever really figured him out.
And they're again, and they sack him. They sack him at the 10-yard line.
Oh, baby! Smith's 200 career sacks are the most in NFL history. His career, a requiem for opposing offenses, marked by the sound of wincing quarterbacks and one rousing refrain. On the next episode of Top 100.
I think of a winner, champion. Those are the first things that come to mind when you mention his name.
2 players in the National Football League, every time they hit you, they tried to hurt you.
Oh, what a devastating shot.
I loved watching him run. He had that kind of beauty. It's poetry.
As a runner, I can do a lot of things. I can run you over.
Holy cow, what a great play.
I can shake you down. I can run around you. I can go through you if I had to.
Unbelievable how this guy makes people miss.
I told him that I was a quarterback and I was a big fan. He put his hand right here and said, son, you're going to be a good one, young man. You're going to be a good one. And I never forgot that.
What a joy it has been to watch that man play football.